panel will offer unique insights into leadership at the highest levels, sharing their experiences, strategies, and thoughts on how to lead boldly and with purpose. So please join me in welcoming McKell Purnell, Leanne Ball, and Keele Taylor. So excited for this panel. Right next to me. I feel like Tamron Hall up here. It's great. So what we want to get started with is just each of you just sharing with us who you are and what you do and a little bit about your journey in becoming an executive leader.
I thought I was third and not first by sitting over here. Hi, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of your day today and inviting me into your community. My name is Leanne Ball, and I am currently the Vice President of Data and Analytics with Carson Group. We're a wealth management firm that nobody's ever heard of until I say it's the new glass building off 144th and Dodge, and then everybody's like, oh, I know that. I drive by that every day. So I've been with Carson Group for about 5 years and leading data teams in that space the whole time throughout my time with Carson. Prior to that, I was with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Nebraska and ConAgra Foods ahead of that. So my background is not actually technology, which is where I'm at now. My background has been math throughout. So I'm a good example of what you go to school for and what you study may not actually be the path that you end up following. So excited to share a little bit more about that as we talk through these questions. And then personally, I am a wife, I am an avid CrossFitter, and I am the proud mother of a 2.5-year-old daughter named Jory.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Keele Taylor. I currently own and operate HR-minded consulting services. We identify critical blind spots for employers so that they can escape costly litigation for failure to adhere to employment law. And so for the last 20 years, I've been in human resources. I have reported to CEOs, GMs for the majority of my career, and I've seen what lies beneath in the workplace. And so for the last 3.5 years, I've owned and operated HR Minded, but as of April, I went full time. So instead of working with my clients full-time on the side, I now do it for fun. It gets me out of bed in the morning, and I help employers do it right. I am McKell Purnell. I have something in common with both these ladies. I now lead an HR team. I'm with OPPD, but I am also a math person. And mathematics, for me, something I studied in school translated to a career. I started in Atlanta at Georgia State University. I'm from the Bahamas, so I will have an immigrant perspective as it relates to some things that we might be discussing. And I was an actuary. I did that for a long time, so I came to HR through the back door. I am very passionate, as CJ is aware, about developing and growing people. That is what I do. I have reinvented myself, so to speak, about 3 or 4 times, and I think I'm in the process of doing it again. I enjoy all things people, looking at them, watching them, etc. And so I have a perspective that sort of comes from that angle. And I look forward to sharing with you, and I've learned so much already, but looking forward to having this discussion.
We're excited to hear from you all. I wish I was a math person. I was never good at math. That's why I do what I do now. So tell me about an instance where you had to take a bold step in your career. What motivated you to do it, and then what was the outcome?
Yeah, so I was data hire #1 for Carson Group. So I was the first hire that they made to try to drive the business in a more data-driven direction. And what that is code for is an organization who's been around for quite some time, who is used to making decisions just with their gut and just with the opinions of a few. And so what that represents is kind of this seismic shift between, using the opinions of just a few to make decisions to drive the company forward versus this new approach that I've been asked to lead, where we're taking a look at the data and some of the things that the facts are telling us. And my role is not to push us strictly in the direction of data and to always use data to make the decisions that we need to as a business. My role is to help marry up the two. There's a place for gut, and there's a place for intuition, and there's a place for data. And the best part is where we can marry these two things together. And so I would say really like my whole career has kind of been a challenge. There's a lot of legacy thinking, and it represents a big shift and a lot of change management to ask people to think about things in a way that they never have before. So I would say the most helpful thing for me on that journey has been, it used to be when I came into work and I had my list of to-dos, the things that I really wanted to do that day, I would get frustrated when I ran into a problem or there was something unexpected that came into my day. And it wasn't until I realized that as a leader, problems are my business. They say that a smooth sea never built a skilled sailor. And so now I'm thinking about challenges as the problems that I am there to face in order to clear the path for my team and in order to build other leaders up behind me. And so just kind of switching my mindset and approaching problems with this understanding that I'm capable of solving them, and that's my role to do so, instead of seeing every problem as something that was preventable or just a frustration in my day.
The workplace has always been my playground. In a sense, I've always taken great responsibility in how we treat people in the workplace. It matters to me. Like the speaker said earlier, words are power, and you plant your seed with your words, right? And so I would say the bold step for me was I've never wanted to be an entrepreneur, never. Like I've always thought about that as like, that is something I could never do. I don't think I could do like a self-paced class. I need to, be on a routine. But the older you get and the more digging you do, if you listen to the greater power, I have a lot of faith. I follow God. I listen to scripture and read every day. And when you do that, you are taken in places that you have never thought that you would be. And so he has a way of helping you to understand what your purpose is and your kingdom assignment. And so for me, the workplace has been my kingdom assignment. I have literally done HR in just about every field or industry that you could think of. From helping trust builders in the warehouse, and then in the warehouse, forklift drivers, IT, graphic designers, people at the casino. You cannot think of how many positions there are to hire in a casino. Oh my goodness, the healthcare industry. I mean, I could go on and on. In all of those years, the 20 years in human resources have helped me to become that person that knows what Maya Angelou said best. People don't care what you know until they know you care. And you cannot change anything without a relationship. And that is the deficit that exists in today's workplace. Earlier, we heard that leadership transcends titles. It's not ever about a title. Even though we want to climb the corporate ladder and we can make more money dependent upon our title, you have to know it's not about that. It's about servant leadership. It's about giving back. It's about making your mark, but it's ultimately about achieving your kingdom assignment. So my advice to you is don't let someone give that to you who is of this world. Do your research, do your reading, whichever higher power you seek. Make sure it is a higher power and it's not on social media, right? and get outside of yourself. There's a lot of people that do things in competition with others, or for clout, or things of that nature. And at the end of the day, it's not about that. It really isn't. It's about what you can give to others, what mark and legacy you can leave for others, which is why I decided to step outside of their workplace and into my own, so that I can make that a better place for those who need to come to work, feed their families, and achieve ultimately their kingdom assignment.
Okay, talking about a risk, a bold move that we took. I left a job without having another job. Yeah, let's get real with that. Um, I I was raised by a very strong woman like Dr. T. I was raised by a single mother, and she is there. Thank you for flying in to see us. She flew in from the Bahamas about 24 hours ago. But I was raised with a perspective that I was to be respected. I was raised and grew up in this space where I taught people how to treat me. I will not be disrespected. I will not be minimized. And I've been fortunate in that I've been able to interview the people who were going to manage me throughout my career, and I've done a pretty good job of selecting people who were going to be advocates for me, support for me, and going to respect me and manage me in the way that I needed to be led to grow into what I was to become. I had the misfortune due to corporate restructuring that I got a leader. And the first time it was done where I felt like, okay, this is going to be a little tenuous situation here. And I had the conversation, because I'm bold like that, that's just who I am, of explaining, this is what I need, this is how I work. And it happened again. And then I explained, I live my life in such a way that I don't have to stay here. Now, what that requires ultimately from us is, and I have an interesting story in and of itself, but that meant for me that I could not buy everything I wanted, because I always had to have a nest egg. When you've created the means for yourself, you get to make decisions in your life that aren't dictated by other people. So for me, it was always, okay, do you need that handbag? Seriously? Because then, freedom for me is one of my values. I am not going to compromise that for anyone. I need to be able to function in the way that I function. So when you are in that type of situation and predicament, you go to work totally different. I enter my workplace with a totally different mentality and mindset. If you're desperate, like, I have to be able to do things, and that's not to say we've all been at that point or been there at some point in our lives, but you want to work. If your goal is to have a level of freedom to do the work that you want to do, to be the person that you want to be, you want to set yourself up so that you don't have those types of things. So the risk for me was the fact that I did that, but I was able to do that. I said, clearly this is not going to work, because I always have seen a job or a part of my career as being a symbiotic relationship. You're getting something from me and I need to get something from you. And as long as that's not working, then, I may need to part ways. And I was willing to do that. And what that did for me, it empowered me more than I even realized at the time, because I was okay. I was okay. I had done the work and prepared myself, and so it didn't turn out to be so bad. It was okay.
So, McKell, I have a follow-up question for you, if that's okay. You know, as a journalist, I'm always thinking of questions, right? So, you were telling us about your experience and how you needed to be assertive and you had to tell people what you needed where you worked. How would you advise us, especially as Black women, to be able to have those conversations about what our needs are and to be assertive? Because, you know, sometimes we might feel intimidated to have those kinds of conversations because we're worried about how we'll be perceived if we speak up for ourselves in the workplace. So what would be your advice related to that?
Oh, great follow-up question. I spend a lot of time with myself. My daughter, my 19-year-old daughter, came to learn relatively quickly that sometimes mom is talking and she's not talking to her. It's just the two of us in the room. And she coined a phrase that, oh, you're talking to your spirit, is what she would say. So I spend a lot of time. I'm very introspective. So each day I generally go through an exercise of how did the day go? How did you show up? What did you do that you liked? What did you do that you didn't like? I encourage, you know, all people to know yourself to the extent you love yourself. There's this thing, you know, we all know about blind spots and we all have them, but the idea for you is to minimize those. Some people truly know more about Kim Kardashian than they know about themselves. We talk about date, you know, we've heard the phrase date yourself. If I ask you a question, what do you want? Do you know the answer? You go into an interview and they ask you, so what do you want to do? How do you see the next 5 years? And some of us are clueless. We don't know because we haven't sat with ourselves and thought about it yet. So you can have this level of boldness to talk about what it is you want to do and where you want to go, and to sort of articulate what your needs are if you know them. If you don't know them, you can't even have the conversation. So the first thing you want to do is spend time with yourself. Learn yourself. What motivates me? Why did I do that? That's interesting. You know, I do some things sometimes and I go, ooh, girl, that's not you. You need to step off that. You know, leave that there. So know yourself. Self-awareness for me is perhaps one of the most important things that you can potentially do for yourself. It's sort of that gift that you give to yourself. And it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Thank you, McKell. I hope y'all are using those notebooks and those pens because the gems are being dropped on this panel right now. So speaking of self, how do you as leaders overcome self-doubt and stay confident in those high-stakes situations that you find yourself in sometimes?
All right, I do the self-talk like we heard earlier, but I make sure that it's grounded in my faith. And I give myself that space and time to sit and listen, and I ask God, what should I do? You know, He is the one that I give all of those questions to, and I sit and listen. And so again, I would just say have that higher power, or you know, use your network that you have, but make sure that it's a reliable, trustworthy network, and that those people are for you to see you win. Because sometimes we have blind spots there too. And, you know, there's that D word, discernment. And if you feel your discernment is off, that's something that you should work on. Practice more discernment. Watch patterns in people. Watch the way they move. Watch the way they treat others. It tells you everything. You know, just like in the interview, we're looking for predictive behaviors. Do that on a regular basis with people.
What a good question. So I think I have a three-part answer if I can remember all three parts of it. And the first one is related to community. So I have a really strong community both in my family and in my role at work, and that is by design. That's what I've built, and that's what's important to me. So I do have a formal mentor at work. It's somebody that I have approached and asked, will you be my mentor? So this person knows that they are serving in that capacity on my behalf. I meet with this individual regularly, and I bring the agenda. I do the work. You know, I'm very thankful of the time that he pours into me. As well as a great technique that I've learned is to build alliances in advance of a meeting or some kind of event that's important to you. So if you're not sure that something's going to go your way, it's really helpful for me to meet with a few people in advance of the big meeting where it's actually going to be decided and ask if I can count on their support. Ask if there's anything that I can do to help them understand more fully before we start this meeting. The real power is if you can meet some of those people who you don't think will be on your side and flip them before the meeting even starts. And then the last one is something that I learned probably pretty early on in my career is I would be sitting in these meetings feeling like I didn't really earn the seat. Like I was just lucky to be there and I wasn't sure if I could contribute. But I was listening really, really closely for things that sounded like opportunities. And when I heard something pop up that was something that I was like, ooh, I have an idea, or maybe I can make something with this, I didn't say anything, I didn't do anything, but I jotted it down. And so what I did in those kinds of situations was I took that problem back and I told nobody I was working on it, but I spent a few hours thinking about how I would approach it. Or I spent a few hours in technology building like an actual proof of concept that I could do that thing. And so what I did was created a safe space for me to experiment without anybody knowing that I was trying. So if I failed, it would be personal. Nobody would know. I could learn from it. But if it happened to be a success, then I could show up to my leadership and say, hey, you know, I heard that thing that you took as your takeaway yesterday. I spent some time thinking about it, and here's what I have to offer. I just created a space for myself to have really small, controlled failures, and trust me, I failed a lot. But it grew my confidence over time so that I did feel like I could contribute in the meeting and actually speak up and say my ideas without having to go study it at my desk after the fact. But even with those three strategies, I still am not the most confident person in the world. I still, you know, experience fear all the time. And I would say, like, above all else, you can't expect to always arrive with confidence that you can do something. And in those times, just do it scared.
So my next question, a lot of us in this room have in common that we're people of faith, right? And scripture says that we should take our faith, well, paraphrasing, but into the workplace, work willingly at whatever you do as though you're working for the Lord rather than for men. With that being said, how do you stay true to your identity and your values in environments that may not always be supportive or inclusive?
Have you ever seen a flower grow in stone or rock? You have? Well, I think the best ones grow in fertile soil. So if I'm in an environment, which I have been in the last 20 years over and over and over and over and over again, where there is mistreatment, there's neglect, it's just not the right environment. Do not be afraid to remove yourself, just like McKell did. You know, do not sacrifice who you are, who you want to be, and that takes knowing yourself. It takes loosening the fear, you know, doing your risk analysis on a regular basis. If you need stability, because I strive thoroughly on stability, I made sure that I had a substantial client base before I went full time. Because stability matters to me. I have to now live on an income that I generate. And do you know how freeing that is? I make more now than I ever did in corporate. And that is not me doing that. That's by the grace of God. Like, I take no credit. When my CPA looked at my records, I thought QuickBooks was lying to me. You know, I take no credit. But and it's all through relationship building. People can feel your authenticity. And they if you work with people the right way, you will garner their trust, their respect. But you also have to know what you're doing. You have to bring that gift. You have to do the work. You know, there's so many businesses out here, and I hope I'm not veering away from the question. I promise I'll get back to it. But there's so many businesses and business owners who do not strive for excellence. And that comes first. You can't just, oh, this is my hustle, I'm gonna get my money. You know, no. What are you giving? It's about giving first. When you lead with giving, the money will come 3 times over. I tell my clients I'm not in it for the money. Oh, we don't have to pay you. Yeah, you'll pay me, but you'll want to. You will want to. You will see the passion and the hand holding and the support. So always be just willing to give first. Everybody, you know, there's a lot of people, what can I get? What can I, you know, they want things quickly today. Sometimes things don't happen quickly. I love what the speaker and names, I'm tired, I work, you know, all hours, so forgive me, but the speaker earlier said, oh my goodness, I just lost it. But yeah, you got to be willing to give before you can receive. You know, and so you dropped a lot of nuggets today. I appreciated all of them. I received them. But yeah, if you are not growing, then move to where you can grow. Move to fertile ground.
Interestingly, that's the exact same place that I was going to start with this question, which is if you are at an organization or at a stage in your life where you feel like your organization and your community is continually going against your values and your belief system, you deserve better. You do not need to stay in that place. Never in my career have I regretted taking a leap of faith for something that felt like the right thing to do. So just do it scared first and foremost. But my journey has been a little bit different. So I have worked at organizations who do trust and value my opinions and who want to create a more inclusive community, who also recognize that they have a lot of work to do to get there and who are willing to put in the work to make a difference. So yeah, throughout my time in all of the organizations that I've been a part of, I have spent time on the committees for DE&I efforts and trying to create a more inclusive workforce. And so for me, the way that I find that work to be the most effective is to think of it, there's kind of this older methodology of managing diversity. Like diversity is something to be managed. Like if you put it on a balance sheet, like you can just make sense of diversity. And once you add, you know, certain people and certain quotas, things are just magically going to be different. But what I've learned is that if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? Even if we bring in all of these different people into the organization, if we don't create and foster a community that supports them and allows them to share ideas and bring their whole authentic self to work, then nothing will change. So it's less about, you know, the metrics on paper, less about getting people into my organization, and more about fostering a workplace where everyone is entitled to their own opinion, where we're seeking ideas from people at all different levels of the organization, and where we're creating a space where people can bring their whole authentic selves to work instead of feeling like they have to check certain attributes at the door. So still a work in progress for everywhere that I've worked, but I think the difference for me is seeing that I'm at an organization that recognizes and will say out loud that there's a problem. There's a problem in Omaha. There's a problem in wealth management. There's a problem with diversity in a lot of the spaces that I've been part of. And so, yeah, being a part of a group that will commit to help making that change has been really important and meaningful for me.
This question feels like it has layers to it, and I'm appreciating what my co-presenters said because I agree with both perspectives. But I can also take this through those layers. So when we talk about our values connecting with what's going on in an organization, we can think about that from an individual perspective, That is me as an individual connecting with other individuals. And then what's happening at a team level, whatever team you define or are associated with. And then looking at the organization at large and just what are the vibes, what's the culture that's coming at you from that perspective. So what we're finding, or what you may even be hearing, as an example, when Elon Musk talked about what he needed in his employees coming in, he wanted them to be committed. And if they needed to work 80 hours a week, he wanted them to do that. People were in an uproar, everyone talked about it. I appreciated that because he is telling you exactly who he is and whether or not that company is for you. And we heard about discernment, having that ability to do that, to sense what's going on. And so again, we're back to this place of, you may have known that the organization was like that before you stepped in the door, but because you needed a job or you wanted a job, and this is real talk, folks. This isn't, anything necessarily wrong with it, but if you go into a toxic place and you may have suspected it was like that before you stepped in, then know that I elected this for myself. We have the ability to elect what it is. Now, some of us walk into organizations and we don't know immediately. That man is telling you who he is and what he wants. Don't hate on him for that. Just know that type of organization is not for me. And if I'm there and this came about as a new thing, then that means I need to start making my exit plan, or I should have had one already, but I need to exit from that environment, right? Nobody's telling anybody to step off a ledge and leave their job without having a safety net. But what you want to do, if we're talking about doing those types of things, is this is how you are in control of your life. You are the CEO of your life. Don't walk into an organization and you're just letting stuff happen to you. So if you're thinking with that mindset, you're going to be prepared but if you're able to, and you were fortunate enough, you walked into a healthy organization, but at the team level or the individual level, there's some misalignment, you sort of, again, having that spirit of discernment, you're finding the people in the organization with whom you can align. And, for me, Gina Langle is the person who helps me. She does a great job of helping me and teaching me to even figure out how to understand other perspectives when I think there's no alignment here, So for me, she is my person who, and she's sitting right in front of me, which is healthy and makes me happy all at the same time. But that's one of my people who helps me I'm going to have a different perspective. And we have to realize that corporate America is not kingdom America. So if you're a faith person and you're walking in there, know that the world and the kingdom are two different places, and there is going to be dissension. There's going to be dissension. So sometimes we have to enter into these situations knowing that there could be some natural tension or friction here, and how am I going to deal with that? How am I going to be okay with that? So I think all of that could be and might be helpful or useful.
So good. So keeping on the topic of authenticity, in our workplaces, we're working with all types of different personalities, different energies. People like to sometimes project their feelings or their thoughts or their values onto us. How do you balance authenticity with expectations that are placed on you as a leader?
Yeah, sure. I think it's not typically expectations that are placed on me by my organization that are the trickiest ones. My organization, I work with a lot of great people, and they kind of acknowledge where I am and acknowledge some of the situations that we've gotten ourselves into. I think probably the hardest expectations in any situation are the ones that I put on myself. I would say maybe one of the biggest things that I've thought about doing differently is just kind of changing what I value my worth to my organization and how I view that. So there's probably the most impactful article I have read in my leadership career is called "Who's Got the Monkey?" I don't know if anyone has ever heard it, but it's an article from the Harvard Business Review, and it was written in like the 70s, so it's got some weird language like that we wouldn't use today just around describing the workplace. But it's this concept that your role as a leader is not just to solve the problems that others around you, like your team, are passing off on you. Your role as a leader is to help people, like the whole story is, it's basically a monkey. So you enter into a conversation with somebody in the hallway and they say, "Hey, Leanne, do you have 5 minutes? I have this problem." And old Leanne would have left that conversation and would have said, "Oh, I'll think about that and I'll get back to you." And so the visual that they talk about in this article is picturing this monkey that arrived on that person's back. It was their problem to solve. And through the course of signing up for that by saying, "Oh, I'll get back to you with this idea that I have of how you should solve your problem," suddenly that monkey transfers onto my back. And so when I first started leading people, I thought that the best thing that I could do for them was to collect all of their monkeys and to solve all of their problems and then hand it back to them nicely gift wrapped. And I'm sure you can see where that went. I ended up really overwhelmed, and my value to the organization just diminished immediately because nothing that I was working on was the most important thing. And so now I think when I get really out of line with expectations and the expectations that I've placed on myself, it's because I'm not doing the right kind of work for my organization anymore. I've collected a lot of monkeys that I'm working on behalf of others, when in reality my best role as a servant leader to my team is to help them, to give them the skills, to guide them through it, but to make sure that their problems remain their problems, so that I'm building a team of really highly capable people and problem solvers who are going to grow into that next generation of leaders. Because if I continue to solve all of the problems for everybody, A, I don't have any time to work on the stuff that's most important to me, and B, that's doing my team a great disservice by not helping them and bringing them into the best that they can possibly be.
Okay, so the question was, how do you balance your authenticity with the expectations that others bestow upon you or put on you, right? Well, I'm a Capricorn. Not only that, but self-assurance is in my top 5 if you're familiar with Clifton Strengths. And what self-assurance is that at your gut. My gut is my second brain. Sometimes it's stronger than the first brain, right? The one on my head. In my head. But I have biblical discernment, and when I'm in an environment or I'm asked to do stuff that goes against my morals, my beliefs, my core, my gut, it bothers me to no end. Like, I cannot. And so when you say, how do you balance authenticity against the expectations that others have for you, what I do is I tactfully explain where I'm coming from, what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it this way because I can't sacrifice my authenticity for someone else's expectations. I don't. And that's why I have, been in those industries. I've spent about 4 or 5 years in every given industry. But there comes a time where I don't, my advice is not to jeopardize, not to sacrifice. And so whether that's the right or wrong answer, that's my answer. If I understand there needs to be balance in most things, but when it comes to any type of sacrifice for your authenticity, I say no.
How do you balance authenticity with expectations that others may have of you? Great question. This goes back to a lot of things I think we have discussed already. So first, do you know who you are? Do you know who you are? what is authentic to you? Some of us are walking into the world and we don't even know who we are ourselves. I remember, and some of you may remember the movie Runaway Bride, when Richard Gere asked Julia Roberts' character, what type of eggs do you like? You don't even know. And really, she didn't know. She just kept adopting the habits of what the person she was with at the time, whomever she was dating or engaged to, whatever they liked. And so, what is authenticity to you? And what does that mean? So first, you need to know that. And then secondly, sort of make a determination as to how you want to show up in the world. How do you want to show up? And when we use the word authentic, people think, or you hear some folks say, well, he or she isn't being authentic. And for me, there's a myriad of authentic ways that I can show up in the world. And I often say at work, they don't want me to show up as authentic Bahamian McKell. And my husband doesn't want me to show up as the authentic daughter that I am. And so, again, as you're entering any space, determine for yourself, how do I want to show up in this space and in the world? So if we're talking about the working world or corporate, whatever that looks like for you, what do I want to enter this space being? How do I want to show up? Knowing that is going to be important. And once you make that determination and you start teaching people, this is how I'm showing up in this space. This is who I am and what I do. You can kind of, in some cases, teach people what to expect of you. And so I'm all about, to the extent that you can, owning the power that you have to be the CEO of your own life, to teach people how to treat you and things of that nature. Now, when we get down into expectations, all these questions are very nuanced, right? This isn't a black and white, this is what to do. Whatever situation you're in, assess that situation, know how you want to show up in that way, tell people this is how you plan on showing up, not as direct as that may be, through the subtleties of your conversation, and take it from there. So you're going to make the work of, this is how I'm going to show up, so that their expectations actually will start to align with what you've presented as, this is my authentic self and this is how I plan to show up and benefit the organization, benefit the team, or benefit you as an individual. Hopefully that makes sense and that resonates with someone.
All right, yes. Well, speaking of showing up, I'm sure there are a lot of people who depend on your expertise. They depend on your leadership. So in your day-to-day, how do you lead with purpose?
I always encourage people to lead first with understanding, seek first to understand, then be understood. No one wakes up trying to make your life miserable. That's not first on their agenda, most people anyway. And so sometimes it pays to ask questions, to seek for a deeper understanding. And so that is usually my advice to leaders, is my advice to friends who are having difficult times with others. I'm really great at having and navigating difficult conversations because I seek first to understand. I ask questions. It's the interviewer in me with HR. Employee relations is my favorite thing to do because I learn so much about that other party. And I am an avid learner. I want to know where everyone else is sitting. I do care about how people view me, but not to my detriment. It's because they offer another perspective, and everyone's perspective, in my opinion, matters. And so I've never been that self-serving individual that's just like, I don't care what they think, or I don't, that person has the problem. I always look at myself first and I'm like, okay, what could I do differently? What is my role in this if there's discourse or if there's a disconnect or whatnot? And then I ask that individual. And even when we're talking about the workplace, that's where the deficiencies lie so often, is because people don't have that thirst for seeking to understand. You can solve so many issues by just asking the person, hey, can we talk? I feel this. Can you share what's on your mind? I wanna understand where you're coming from with that. But you do have to, emotion is a thing. And I'm not trying to veer too far off the subject, but you do have to calm that fight and flight, right? And you have to be ready for what could come when you seek first to understand. And if you practice that, you'll get really great at it. And you will learn so much about the people around you. And then you can help to develop your own discernment a lot better. Make sure that that's sharp. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Leanne.
I'm not sitting in the middle ever.
In my day-to-day, how do I lead with purpose? I am a broken record. First and foremost, you want to know what that is. Spend some time, again, knowing what that is. For me, like I said, I'm all about growing people. That's what I do. I'm a farmer. I grow people. That's what I do. I was a teacher, so in that job, I figured out how to do that. Even when I had a job that was naturally not in that space of necessarily growing or developing people, I always sought out opportunities to do that. And I think that was why I sort of made the transition into the role that I have today. So knowing what it is that is your purpose, and if you don't know what that is yet, your purpose may be just to enrich others, to be a decent human being. For most of us, that's what we wake up wanting to do. We want to get up, we want to be healthy and happy, and we want to contribute to the world and make the world a better place. So for me, I wake up with that in mind. I ask the Creator each morning to help me to step into what it is that He would have for me to do as I'm connecting with people, to have a heart to hear from them. I always say with each question, there's typically a question behind the question. And with each interaction, there could be hurt or pain. And if that is the case, help me to be able to discern that so that I can step in and help in whichever way. As Keele said, for us, for all of us, generally we're going to benefit more if we're thinking about what can we give and how can we help. So if you haven't yet associated any type of, what is your purpose here in terms of I haven't yet figured out why I'm here on earth or what my purpose is, then just think about, how can I be a good person and help others? What might that look like for me? And so I wake up with that mindset and I go through the day. Some days I'm more successful than others. Some days I totally crash and burn. But then I get to reflect at the end of the day and say, please don't do that again. You disappointed yourself a little bit today. And let's give ourselves some grace. We are human beings. Don't be so hard on yourself to believe that you're not going to fail, you're not going to make mistakes. I think about things like that, and I look at others and I realize a few things about human beings. We all have a story. And most of our stories include something that's challenging or difficult. And if you enter a space in interacting with others with that mindset, then that could make things a little bit better in terms of how to incorporate some type of purpose into your day-to-day life.
My response will sound really similar to these ladies, but really purpose comes from having a well-established why. And you can't count on waking up every morning motivated to go into work or go into whatever it is that's most important to you right now, unless you have a strong purpose behind what it is that you're trying to achieve. So in those moments where things are more challenging than normal or outside life has gotten a little bit harder, really being able to fall back on why it is you're doing what you're doing is where you can seek that motivation that doesn't ebb and flow quite so much. I think the other important part about leading with purpose is how helpful it is to have a strong value system. Like when I think about the values that I bring to the workplace, it helps so much in decision making. So when I'm faced with a challenging decision, there might be 5 total options. But if 3 of those are options that go against my value system, if they don't feel like the best decision for me based on what's most important to me, I can easily cross off those 3. I'm not wasting any more time or energy worrying about things that aren't aligned with who I want to be and how I want to portray myself. So leading from the set of values that you have and really determining that why is what's going to keep you motivated on that journey. For me right now in financial services, it's not an industry that I ever saw myself being a part of, but my role in data is that we enable financial advisors to serve more families. And so as I create tools for them to be more efficient, that means that they can take on a couple of additional clients. And what that actually means is that that client can send a first-time student to college, or that client can have a retirement where they're not financially worried every day, or that client can get their son or daughter married and feel like they were able to give them the celebration that they really wanted to. So it feels kind of disconnected, but when I hear the stories from clients about what they were able to do as a result of, caring about their financial future, that's what really stokes the fire in me and helps keep me passionate about how what I'm doing is connected to stuff that has a greater purpose and improves the lives of those around us.
Is there another question? Quickly, I want to add, do audacious things. When you're searching for purpose, do audacious things. Take the risk always. And as many times as you can, say yes. Say yes to things. That's how our speaker, became a speaker, right? She said yes. That's what I want to say. I just climbed Manitou Mountain by myself, over 2,000 stairs up the side of a mountain. And it was the hardest thing, but at the bottom of that mountain, it says people have died on this mountain. You need to be in physical shape, all the scary things. But when you do audacious things and you make it to the top of that mountain, can't nobody tell you can't do something.
I love that. Do audacious things. I'm going to have to write that down. I love that. So how are you guys enjoying the panel so far? It's been incredible, right? Yes. So we are going to go into our final thoughts. So the last question I have for you ladies, what advice would you give to women aspiring to leadership roles, particularly those from underrepresented backgrounds?
I will start, ladies, doing us the favor. I think something you can do for yourself as you're going through this journey of first determining if you want to be a leader is to connect the dots. You have lots of things going on in your lives outside of work. Put work on the side. When I determined that leadership might have been for me, it was not in a corporate setting. The most difficult leadership roles that I have performed have not been in corporate America. It's been as a mother, it's been as a daughter or a family member, it's been as a volunteer. My most challenging leadership role was leading a nonprofit team of 60 people. And the thing that I tell a lot of folks who aspire to these types of things is when you are leading the nonprofit world, especially with volunteers, you don't have the benefit of what I call the carrots and sticks. You don't have any salaries to entice people with, and you definitely don't have the ability to fire anybody. So you have to connect people then with things like the mission, things like purpose. But ultimately, in connecting the dots, what I'd like for you to do is consider how many times you're actually leading and influencing outside of your job. Think about, oh, I'm the vice president or secretary of a PTA, and what does that look like? What have I been doing in those types of spaces? So you're leading more than you know or acknowledge. So when you get to work, all of a sudden, it's like your brain somehow shuts off. A lot of brains shut off that I've just been leading a team of 20 parents doing something, and you're not connecting the skills that you demonstrated there with what you can bring into the organization. So you need to connect dots, recognize the successes that you have already demonstrated in the world before you enter any organization, so that no one can tell you, because we hear a lot, okay, this person may not be ready. You're going to have to, or be able to maybe adapt your leadership skills to an environment in a certain type of way, but you already have leadership skills and abilities. And I want you to think about those and bring those to the forefront as you are entering into a workplace and determining whether or not leadership is for you and something that you truly want to go after.
I would say my number one piece of advice is be prepared to be resilient. The journey to do whatever it is that you want to do is not going to be an easy one, and acknowledging that going into it will just make you better prepared for when you run into those obstacles. So one of the things that gets really frustrating in my role is that it's hard to enact change. It's hard to get people on board with big ideas that I have. And there are nights that I come home from work and I'm like, boy, I can never make this change happen. It's going to take too long. People are just too resistant, whatever that looks like. But the thing that really helps me stay motivated is to zoom out a little bit. So I've been with my company for 5 years, but the company has like a 40-year history. And some of these things that I'm working on most recently, I've only been asking for 2 months or 6 months or a year. And so these things that I feel like I've been working on forever, when you zoom out and take a look at the larger picture, it's such a brand new idea to this organization. If I haven't, made an influence that I wanted to in 1 year, like the example that I always give is when you're watching Rocky or some kind of like hero's journey story or some kind of, a movie like that, you can tell that something is different when they enter into their training montage. So it's like always the same thing at the beginning. Some sports team or Rocky or somebody is up against a couple fights and they just get rocked. They get beat so bad that they're thinking about quitting. They're thinking about, getting out of the business altogether. And then they try something different and they enter into their Rocky montage. And we as the audience can tell it's different because the music starts to play and they've tried this new training thing that they never did before. And so it's really obvious to us that something is different, and that next fight after the training montage is going to be successful, and that's like the cusp of their success. But for you and I as people, we don't know if we're in our Rocky montage or if we're in bout one, we're about to get rocked. So I would say just zoom out on the big picture and know that your Rocky montage is coming and that you'll have that big moment where you're like, dang, this was all really worth it. But you're going to face some obstacles along the way, and so just don't check out after you get told no or get knocked down 1 or 2 times, because you've got a lot of fight left in you.
I love that. I would say it starts with you understanding why you want to be a leader, and then asking yourself the question, would I follow myself? Are you the type of leader that you would want for yourself? And what can you give back? Again, it's all mindset, and you need to have, in my opinion, a servant leadership mindset. Because when you have something to offer, then you will have people who want to and are willing to follow you. No one wants to follow that leader. And if you think about your workplace right now, there are a lot of leaders by title, but they have nothing to offer. Or they have toxicity to offer, right? So are you going to be that leader who offers toxicity? Are you going to offer people purpose and encouragement and development? So you have to sit with yourself first before you apply for leadership positions or before you take on a leadership position in an organization or anything on the side, and really do some soul searching as to what can you offer. And be consistent with things. Your brand, as the CEO of yourself, you have a brand. And if Nike was inconsistent with their brand and we couldn't tell it if it was just do it or don't do it today or just F it or whatever, they would not be as successful as they are. And we have a lot of leaders by title today who are inconsistent. I look at them like, what is that brand? Like, I wouldn't buy it for nothing. This reminds me of kids or something. But just bring value to everything that you do. Be consistent, be powerful, loosen fear. There's no need for it, especially in the workplace. We have so many rights as employees that you couldn't even imagine. And that's the magic, but also the danger, for the employer is that, you deserve a level of treatment that many times we don't get in the workplace. So do your research, educate yourself, and then just determine who you want to be for other people. That is so important.
Let's give our panelists another hand. Thank you so much for your insight. We all have to leave here with something. Denzel said, I'm leaving here with something. We got to leave with something. All right.